Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's All-Star Celebration and Fundraiser for BINC. We're so grateful to all of you for being here. And I'm grateful, I'm Melanie, by the way, Director of Public Programming at Center for Fiction. And I am so grateful to introduce Brian Gresko. He is our host for the evening. And I'm gonna turn it over to him right now so we can get this party started.
Cool, thank you, Melanie. Hi, I'm Brian Gresko, host of the Antibody, a quarantine reading series, part of LitHub's virtual book channel, here with you tonight in collaboration with the Center for Fiction. I'm coming to you from my writing studio in Brooklyn, but I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia during the 1980s, which means that my earliest memories of bookstores are connected with those temples of American capitalism, the shopping mall. My stomping grounds, the King of Prussia Mall, had a Walden Books and had a B. Dalton, but my favorite was Jean's Books. And before I was old enough to know what an independent bookstore was, I could tell that Jean's was different. It was special. Jean's fiction section alone was as large as one of those chain stores in its entirety. The displays featured local authors and staff picks, living authors, which were a rare species to a working class nerd in the burbs like me, sometimes stopped by to sign their books, and the booksellers were as knowledgeable and helpful as librarians, those guardian angels of the literary world. Jean's is no longer, but independent bookstores remain the lifeblood of literary communities across the nation for authors and readers alike. And for many of us, they're safe harbors, places where we feel seen and surrounded by friends. And today, because of the pandemic that is affecting every part of our society, independent bookstores and booksellers are in greater need than ever. So I'm grateful tonight that all of you are here to support the Book Industry Charitable Fund, BINC, a nonprofit whose programs have been helping independent booksellers and comic book retailers for decades. And since March, BINC has assisted bookstore employees and shop owners with medical expenses, unexpected loss of household income, funeral expenses, domestic violence survival aid, and more. The Center for Fiction's bookstore has itself benefited from their good work, and all the proceeds of your ticket this evening is going to BINC to provide some much needed relief during this crisis. So thank you. Thank you too to the 4 amazing authors we have with us this evening. Jericho Brown is here, Carmen Maria Machado is here, Celeste is here, and Karen Russell is here. And before we share this virtual experience with them, I hope that you will join me in just taking a deep breath and settling your body back so that you can appreciate their words. The chat is public, it's our shared space, so use it, please, to show your appreciation of the authors, often and enthusiastically. And you can get those keys clicking and your fingers tapping right now as I introduce our first author of the evening, Carmen Maria Machado. Carmen is the author of the best-selling memoir In the Dream House and the short story collection Her Body and Other Parties. She has been a finalist for the National Book Award and the winner of the Bard Fiction Prize, the Lambda Literary Award for both lesbian fiction and LGBTQ nonfiction, the Brooklyn Public Library Literature Prize, the Shirley Jackson Award, and the National Book Critics Circle's John Leonard Prize. Her essays, fiction, and criticism have appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Granta, Harper's Bazaar, Tin House, Virginia Quarterly Review, and plenty of other amazing publications. She's the writer in residence at the University of Pennsylvania and lives in Philadelphia with her wife, where she's joining us tonight. Welcome, Carmen. The microphone is yours.
Excellent. Okay. Wait, you can all hear me, right? Great. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm coming to you from my living room. I am going to be reading from a short story that was published in Granta that came out early this year. The story is called The Lost. I'm not reading the whole thing. It's very long, but the story is called The Lost Performance of the High Priestess of the Temple of Horror. It is set in Paris in the 30s, and all you need to know is that the protagonist is a young woman who has run away from home and gone to the Grand Guignol, which was a naturalistic horror theater that existed in France from the last century into like the 1940s. So I will read 2 excerpts from the story. And also I will reference the character Moxa. Moxa was a real actress who performed in this theater. After I'd helped Moxa prepare for the night's performance, I was allowed to sit in the audience, though not to occupy a paying chair. I thought I would become tired or bored of the same rotating set of plays every night, but I could not stop watching Moxa. She exhibited control over every twitch. She never laughed when she might have laughed, never put a crack in the tension. Every night, Moxa screamed on stage. Her scream was a magnificent thing, a resonating animal that climbed out of her throat and gamboled around the room. Some nights, if the room was particularly hot, I swore I could see ribbons of her voice emanating from her. She screamed as she was raped and strangled, disemboweled, stabbed. She screamed as she was consumed by wild cats, shot in the gut, shot in the head, here accompanied by an uncanny whistling sound, as if the scream was coming through the newly created orifice. She screamed as she was beaten, lit on fire. Audience members would stagger into the street to vomit, and at the end of the night, the cobblestones were glistening, or were studded with glistening puddles. There were always a few doctors in the audience, sitting at the end of their rows. They were necessary, as fainting audience members were a regular occurrence, mostly men, which caused a great deal of snickering and speculation among us. The prevailing theory for this fact was that women are always afraid and covering their eyes, and the men watched what they could not, and then found themselves unable to bear it. But Moxa knew the truth and told me the reason for the fainting. Most men, she said, would only see bodily fluids when they caught their ejaculate in their hands, or if their life ended at the wrong end of a brawl. But for women, gore was a unit of measurement, monthly cycles, the egg-white slip of arousal, the blood of virginity stolen through force of hand or force of law, childbirth, fist splitting the skin of the skull, the leak of milk, tears. I once saw a woman in the street who had been knocked about by her lover or perhaps a customer. Her eye socket looked crushed. The new shape of her head made my stomach curdle. She was weeping, but the tears were pink. She wiped them from her filthy face and looked at them on her hand, the color of a rare diamond. Even my tears bleed, she said, and staggered down the street. Men occupy terra firma because they are like stones. Women seep because they occupy the filmy gauze between the world of the living and the dead, Moxa said. She was always saying stuff like that. But after watching her perform every night, I began to believe her. And then this section takes place sometime later. Also, forgive me, I do not speak French, so I will mangle all the French in the story. On a warm evening in May, Moxa invited me to take a walk with her. We drifted away from St. George's down past the Theater Morgador. She held my arm with an uncanny intimacy, as if we had been friends since childhood. I have seen you write, she said. Have you ever considered writing a play? I've never written a play, I said. I enjoy your performances, but I don't know if I could ever write anything that could rise to them. It isn't about that, she said. It's the pairing of power, not the transfer of it. The actress and the authoress meet in the middle. I picked up my skirts to avoid a pile of horse shit. You know, she said, I like that you wear this old-fashioned thing. I bet you still wear a corset, too. I flushed. I only wear it because I can't afford anything new, I said. She pulled me around another pile of dung, and when I was clear of it, I could still hear the buzzing of flies. She did not remove her hand, but ran it along the line of my shoulder. I shuddered with the familiarity of the gesture. Then we were at the Seine, past the Champs-Élysées, and I blinked as the river which had come up so suddenly. It flowed with an aggressive swiftness, and I suspected if there had been light in the sky, the motion would have made me dizzy. Have you ever noticed how the buildings become less crowded as you get closer to the water? Moxa asked me. It's like the teeth of a young girl as she ages into an old woman. One day she has too many, and eventually she'll have too few, a mouth of glistening gums. We began to walk over a bridge. Moxa turned to look at the water. I did as well. The river unspooled before us like a line of spilled ink, making its way across the table. Along the shore, we saw something moving in the shadows. When I was a girl, she said, a mad dog bit the neighbor's child. The dog was shot dead, but the girl became ill. My mother and I went to visit her, and in her bed, she saw me and began to scream. She howled and kicked and acted mad herself, as if she would have rather torn through the walls with her bare hands than been in the room for one more moment with me. She fell silent, and I worried a chip of stone that had been resting on the railing. She did not say anything else, and after a few minutes, we continued walking. When we reached the nymphs at the center of the bridge, Moxa turned my body toward her. She bent my torso backwards over the cold stone and wrapped her hands lazily around my throat like a sleepy man clutching his member to piss. Behind me, the black river was a starless sky, and the sky a star-filled river, and she pulled up my skirt and stroked my sex with her fingers. I hung there like a strung-up game bird, blood vacillating between my legs and my head, until I felt a swell like the air before a storm. My abdomen spasmed, and the more I trembled, the more firm her grip became, and somewhere in the space between darkness and darkness, my cells expanded outward, and I bore down against her hand as if my muscle wished to vacate my skin. Thank you, I said. Thank you, thank you. She pulled me upright and drew my shaking body against her breast. Then she kissed me, as if extracting snake venom from a wound. Back in her room, she removed her stockings and pulled her skirt to her waist. I went to her with my mouth, but she pulled my face toward her and slipped my fingers inside. She secluded them, all muscle and fold, drew me in, and I moaned into her collarbone. It felt like I was pushing into a closed fist. Write me a play, Bess, she said, panting and pushing against me. Write the filthiest, foulest, most tremendous play, and we will put it on. That night, I dreamt I was spread eagle on a ceramic platter, larger than my body, glossy and white as the moon. In the sky, a blazing star grew larger and larger, coming toward both of us. Moxa sat down before me and began to swallow me like a python, and I was gripped by the muscle of her until she'd taken me in entirely. The air grew white and hot, and even as we were unmade, I was coming. When I woke up, nude and draped at Moxa's feet, I knew the play that had to be written. Thank you, everybody.
Wow, thank you, Carmen. That was amazing. Please, everyone, use the chat there and show Carmen some love. That was fantastic. Oh my gosh. I think last time I saw you read was at Franklin Park, and it just bringing me back to, it was magical then, it was magical now. Thank you so much. Very, very, very cool.
Hey guys.
Karen, I'm going to, give me 1 second.
Oh,
here we go.
Kidding.
I got your bio. Thank you again, Carmen. Next up is Karen Russell. Karen won the 2012 and 2018 National Magazine Award for Fiction, and her first novel, Swamplandia, was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. She has received a MacArthur Fellowship and a Guggenheim Fellowship, the 5 Under 35 Prize from the National Book Foundation, the New York Public Library Young Lions Award, the Bard Fiction Prize, and is a former fellow of the Cullman Center and the American Academy in Berlin. Karen's most recent book is the short story collection, Orange World, which is fantastic. Please, everyone, get those fingers tapping and keys clicking and give Karen some love in the chat. Welcome, Karen. You've got it.
Hey, Brian. Sorry, I jumped the gun there. Oh my God, Carmen. Are you kidding me? That's so incredible. Even my tears bleed. I don't want to follow Carmen, you guys. I said I was okay with the reading order, and now I regret that. I wouldn't want to follow any of these readers. It's such an honor to be part of this. I somehow did something on my computer where all I can see is like the bookmark of our faces. I'm just going to stay the course. I feel like that's another marketing opportunity that I'm looking at to help BINC. Brian, thank you so much for giving us a chance to help independent bookstores. I feel like I owe my whole career to independent booksellers, and long before that, as an adolescent, just riding my bike to Books and Books in Miami, that was, the chrysalis that got me through, a pretty hard time. And it's great to get to do this. And I'm going to read from something new, just the very beginning, so not too much. Maybe this will be a nothing, I'm not sure, but I have a novella called Sleep Donation coming out next month, and it's about an insomnia epidemic. People have to donate dreams to insomniacs. I wrote the original novella before I had kids, when I thought I even understood what insomnia was. So now I'm being punished with lots of free lessons in the horrors of sleep deprivation every night. So this is from that same world of kind of contagious nightmares. Let me see how to, sorry guys. It's called Cleaver Eye. Although, tell me in the chat box if you think of a better title, I'd be grateful. Let me see. Cleaver Eye, like an eye, not like I, comma, cleaver. Okay. The man climbing the low hill wore the scariest smile the girls had ever seen. He was a big man, at least 300 pounds, and yet he seemed to drift through the falling snow with the aimlessness of a feather. A white man with a vanishing islet of reddish hair, wearing only a t-shirt and holey sweats into the drifts. A red leash dangled from his hand, picking up snow as it dragged behind him. Had his dog gotten free? Could such a person really own a dog? His chapped hands were red as apples, and it hurt to look at their torn fingernails. He was older than their mother, younger than their grandfather, with friendly jowls and a powdery goatee, gold like the cattails you could still see poking through the snow at the edge of the canal. It was a late winter afternoon, and Natalia and Isla had entered the park at a diagonal. Their mother had forbidden them from crossing at dusk, but walking always felt better than waiting for the bus. Like every other teenager, Natalia knew how to hack her Find Me settings. Right now, her parents were tracking the progress of an imaginary daughter. A little ember that smoldered at a school desk from 7 to 3 ran in droning circles around the track with other college-bound youths. Go Tapers! Made a beeline home after practice. Natalia liked to watch her avatar's soothing rotations while she got stoned with Isla under the bridge. She took a custodial pride in her little ghost. A data point instead of a daughter, two-dimensional, reliable, beating like a gentle heart. As far as their parents knew, she and Isla were both blipping at the bus stop. In the falling dark, on nobody's radar, the stranger turned and locked eyes with them. Mid-soliloquy and groggily windmilling his arms, he approached Natalia and Isla where they stood, gaping in their quilted white parkas. "This looks like a pillowcase for the moon, Mom," Isla had complained, although as the temperature dropped, she gratefully zipped it up to her chin. The man's voice lifted in urgency and pitch, a tea kettle whistle, "Tip me over and pour me out." He was almost singing now. Peacock, slapdash, artichoke, yellow, briquettes, saint, glacier, secret, order of the cobra-hooded nuns. The words teetered on the edge of meaning. Both girls shook their heads like swimmers trying to clear their ears. "Shut up," Natalia screamed. This was the wrong move. It was as if her cry had roused an older animal inside him. With a predatory snap, the large man grabbed at Isla with his naked fingers. He must be freezing, Natty thought, amazed that she could think at all. The wisp of a smile clung to his face, a smile that meant as little as the clouds racing overhead. With a fairy tale step, 7 leagues at once, or so it seemed to the sisters, he closed the distance. Natty, who broke track and field records despite skipping most practices, was halfway to the tree line before she realized that Isla had been caught. Fear slid cleanly down her middle, separating her into 2 people, fighter and flyer, sister and traitor. For a terrifying few seconds, it seemed the anonymous life hunger, run, 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 would win. Later, she would remember the canary yellow trilling of her heart betraying itself. But she paused for long enough to understand that there was no safety beyond the trees. The best part of her would not survive the act of abandoning her sister. So it was as much to save herself as to save Isla that she turned to stand under the sick man's water-falling mouth. Isla was staring dopily up at him, absorbing everything. Cleaver eye, he sang. Did it relieve his burden to pass on the nightmare, or was it like a sneeze, a reflex, his body's losing battle against the dream? Was he aware of what he was saying? With trembling hands, Natty unpocketed the state-issued earplugs that looked like tiny metal flowers, tried to push one into Isla's ear. She dropped both into a cold dune. Don't listen to him, drown him out, turn up the volume on your own thoughts. They had drilled what to do in this very emergency at school. If you suspected a stranger was describing a contagious nightmare, you should recite Maya Angelou, the periodic table of the elements, anything to block the transmission. But her thoughts floated off, petals torn from a shocked green stem. No new thoughts grew to replace them. Into the breach rushed his voice. Cleaver eye, cleaver eye, cleaver eye. Natalia could feel the words taking root. She clapped the back of her neck, wailing. She saw, or imagined she saw, a bright eye reflected in the lean mirror of a cleaver. Interstellar rings around a dilating hole. The color was unstable, vibrating from gold to purple. Whose eye? The eye of what? Not this man's boot leather brown one, not her own. Dream eye that was already dissolving, sinking deeply, irretrievably inside her to the echoing depth. What Isla's body did with these same two words differed from Natalia in unspeakably subtle ways. The cleaver was wider and bloodier, the eye a rabbit pink bead. Did the eye belong to the killer or the victim? Above them, the sick man's bare skull was gathering snowflakes. His smile made Natalia think of the grins of alligators, Isla of abandoned fence line. They only escaped because the man stopped talking to Hiccup, rolling the balding skull between his hands, the whole head jumping. Cleaver, many hiccups. Natty tugged Isla's arm free of his grip. Hand in hand, they ran. Neither spoke until they reached the road, and when they turned, the man was a dissolving speck. They watched him hitching along, falling at one point, dragging a dead leg after him before rising heavily up again, one hand scuffling at his crotch, another lost in his thinning hair. He was out of earshot for now, although the wind might change. Isla kicked her sister's shins. We should report him. We should. How much of that did you hear? The sisters stared at each other in the street light's halo. Isla was panting harder than the low hill warranted, tears pooling in her eyes that Natalia pretended not to see. None of it, right? Almost nothing. Ernie was on the couch nursing the baby when her daughters walked in with petals of snow still melting in their dark hair. I was getting worried. Was the bus late? The bus was late, the girls repeated as if stamping a document. Lately, their mother handed out alibis as soon as they walked in the door. She returned to her passionate love affair with the baby and asked no further questions. The baby stared up at them with huge, opaquely luminous eyes. Where was that astral light coming from? Uh-oh. There should be, can you guys hear me? Okay. There should be a baby in every interrogation room, thought Natalia. She felt certain that the baby knew everything about the man in the snow, the one who they'd abandoned, escaped. Well, I'm glad you're home. There's a nightmare cluster in Newcastle. Oh, this was exciting. Maybe no school tomorrow then. Newcastle was 3 hours to the west. Where's it projected to hit, Ma? South of here. They all turned to face the home screen. Its purple glow turned the living room into a submarine. They watched as the nightmare cluster pulsed outward on the map, the anchor wanding over the affected regions. Look, said Isla. It's moving. I'll stop there. Thanks, guys.
Wow, thank you, Karen. Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to have nightmares tonight. That was amazing. So vivid, so wonderful. Thank you. Show some love for Karen Russell in the chat there. I see it. Yeah, I would definitely be saying not the periodic table, the Maya Angelou. Very, very cool. Thank you so much. Just a shout out to the audience here at the end. There will be some time to ask some questions. So if you've got some questions, let them stew, and you'll get a chance at the end. But first, we're just going to keep going. Our next reader is Celeste Eng. Celeste's first novel, Everything I Never Told You, was a New York Times bestseller, a New York Times notable book of 2014, an Amazon #1 best book of 2014, and named a best book of the year by over a dozen publications. It's been translated into over 30 languages and is being adapted for the screen. Celeste's second novel, Little Fires Everywhere, was named a best book of the year by over 25 publications and spent over a year on the New York Times bestseller list. Little Fires Everywhere has been published abroad in more than 30 languages and recently adapted as a limited series on Hulu starring Reese Witherspoon and Kerry Washington, which recently received several Emmy nominations. I took the liberty of updating that bio for you, Celeste. Celeste is a recipient of the Pushcart Prize, a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Guggenheim Fellowship, among other honors. And it's so exciting to have her here tonight. Welcome, Celeste. You've got the mic.
Thank you, Brian. Wait, I have to change my view because I can't talk to my own face. Okay. Thank you, Brian, and the Center for Fiction for organizing this. And Carmen, Karen, Jericho, it's such an honor to get to read with you, even virtually. I'm a huge fangirl of all three of yours. So when Brian told me the lineup, I was like, would you want to do this? I was like, yes, I will. I've been finding writing to be really a struggle in the past 5 months, as I think many people have. So I hope you'll forgive me if I'm going to read something that's a little bit older. One of the reasons I think that writing has been really a struggle for me is that I'm really troubled, as I think so many of us are, by what's going on in the world right now. And so what I thought I would read for tonight is an essay that came out in this anthology called Radical Hope, which is edited by Carolina de Robertis. And it's a collection of essays written in the form of letters. So the assignment was that writers could write to whoever they wanted and to say whatever they wanted. And what I ended up writing was a letter to my son, who at the time had just turned 6. This was right after the 2016 election. And he was coming home with a lot of questions. And I was trying to understand how to answer those questions when I didn't understand, the answers to those questions myself. One of the funny things about having a kid, and he's 9.5 now, is that I'm learning that half of the things that I tell him are actually things that I need to tell myself and remind myself. So I'm hoping that I'm reading this almost as a reminder to myself, and I'm hoping it'll speak to some others as well. So the essay is called Stay Open. My darling boy, you are such a kind child. You've been kind since birth. You used to cry when other babies at daycare cried, even if you were snuggled in your favorite teacher's lap. You used to ask me to skip the pages of the book where the problems happened, where Goldilocks breaks Baby Bear's chair, where Eeyore's tail falls off, where Max tells his mother he'll eat her up. It was too painful for you to see those things happen. Even now, at 6, sometimes you still bury your face in my shoulder at those moments. It's one of my favorite things about you. Your huge heart. But that huge heart makes you vulnerable. When there's too much fear, too much pain, too much feeling, you try to shrink away, to hide. You've always loved turtles, and I think I know why. You have the same tendency they do, to retreat inside yourself in the face of trouble. Except you, sweet boy, have no shell, and the rain and stones and thorns find you anyway. Even rolled up tight, you are just as tender outside as you are in. This has been fine so far because we live in an unusual place. It's the closest place I can find to the world I want you to live in. A kind and gentle place, an accepting place. I don't think you realize yet how unusual it is. So many things in your life, that our city observes Indigenous Peoples' Day instead of Columbus Day, that your school gets vacation for Easter and Rosh Hashanah and Eid, that 5 families on our 2-block street are mixed race, are so different from most of our country. To you, they seem completely natural and unremarkable, as your friend Harper, who has a mommy and a mama, or your friend Christopher, who likes to wear dresses, or your kindergarten classmates with names from Hannah to Tiger Lily to Amadou, or their parents who come to pick up wearing hijabs or suits or hoodies, or in one case, sleeve tattoos. Your father and I wanted to raise you here because we wanted you to meet lots of people who aren't like you, and you do. So sometimes you ask big questions, and I try to put big answers into words small enough for you to understand. We were running errands, and you said suddenly, "What's gay?" You'd heard it on the car radio. Marriage equality had just passed, and some people were upset. I told you it was when, for example, men love men or women love women, and that some people didn't like that. And you said, with a defiant thrust of your little jaw, "Well, I think it's fine." You saw my sweatshirt that said feminist and asked what it meant, and I said, "Someone who thinks women are just as good as men." And you thought for a minute and said, genuinely puzzled, "Why would people think they weren't?" Another day you asked what black and white meant, and I tried to tell you. And then I told you that some people thought people with darker skin weren't as good as people with lighter skin, and you said, voice dripping with scorn, "Well, that's not right." And I said, I know. And I was so proud of your big heart, how ridiculous this all seemed to you. But we don't live in a bubble. I knew this, of course, but in the past few weeks, I've had to face it more and more. A week after the election, an elderly woman in our neighborhood was pushed to the ground by two strangers shouting, "You didn't vote for Trump." The house next door had a Clinton sign in the window. The woman had been taking her garbage to the curb. The men had assumed the sign was hers. The news all across the country was full of these stories. Soon you're going to realize how hard so much of the world is, even in our town. I had no idea when I was writing this how exponentially more true this was going to become. These days, I sometimes wish I could give you a shell, or at least a thick, leathery hide. Anything that would protect you more than your soft child skin. In less fearful moments, though, this is what I want to tell you. Resist the urge to grow a shell. Don't let fear convince you that hardness is good. We've heard so much lately about barring certain people, deporting other people, building an actual wall to keep still others out. We've heard people, who are now running our government, mock those in need, those with disabilities, those who dare to admit they're different, or they struggle, or they hurt, or they've been hurt. It would be easier in some ways, wouldn't it, not to care so much, for pain and fear and sadness to bounce off us like bullets off Superman's chest. But the thing about shells and walls is that they keep out so many good things too. Staying open makes you vulnerable, yes, but it also makes space for kindness and gentleness and compassion. The other day, I told you our family motto was, be kind, be curious, be helpful. Kindness and helpfulness you understood right away. Then you asked, why is curious in there? Because being curious is admitting that you don't know, but also that you want to know. That what you don't know is worth knowing. That people you don't know are worth knowing, that they have something to teach you, that learning about them, that encountering new ideas doesn't threaten you, it enriches you, that what you haven't experienced is worth experiencing, that you approach the world as a trove of things to take in, rather than things you frantically, fearfully wall out. Be kind, be curious, be helpful. What that really means to me is stay open. This will be so important for the next few years, but really, it goes beyond this election, the new administration, whatever may come after that. It's about the kind of person I hope you'll grow up to be, the kind of country I hope you get to live in, the kind of world I hope you'll help make. So let me tell you one more thing. It's something I remind myself when confronted with hate and fear, something that I hope you keep in mind in this new era and always. Every one of those conversations you and I have had about being gay, being feminist, being Black, or being white, ended with the same question. But why would people think that? You asked every time. And every time I gave you the same answer. Because they're afraid. Because it's different from what they grew up thinking. And it's a new idea. And sometimes new things are scary. Like the first time you went swimming, I tell you, or that time you tried rock climbing, or the first time we went in a plane. You'd never done it before, and you thought it would be scary. But then I realized it wasn't, you say, and I say, exactly. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Celeste. That was beautiful. Thank you. Everyone just take a moment there to show some love. That was awesome. All right. Very, very timely. Thank you again, Celeste. That was beautiful. Our final reader of the evening is Jericho Brown. Jericho is the author of 3 collections of poetry: The Tradition, a finalist for the 2019 National Book Award and the winner of the 2020 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry; The New Testament, which won the Anisfield Wolf Book Award and was named one of the best books of the year by Library Journal, Cold Front, and the Academy of American Poets; and Please, which won the 2009 American Book Award. Jericho is the recipient of the Whiting Writers Award and fellowships from the John Simon Guggenheim Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Radcliffe Institute at Harvard University, the Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and the Krakow Poetry Seminar in Poland. He was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award, the Tom Gunn Award, and the Hurston Wright Poetry Prize. He is an associate professor and the director of the Creative Writing Program at Emory University in Atlanta. Please welcome Jericho Brown. Show him some love in that chat, everyone. Jericho, you got it.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I just want to announce first that I am not a diva. I didn't know everybody was wearing black shirts. If I had known everybody was wearing black shirts, I too would have worn a black shirt. I'm not trying to, sing my note higher than everybody else sings their note or anything like that. Thank y'all so much for having me. It's really an honor to read with these writers in particular whose work I love. And all of whom have had the opportunity to tell before that I love their work. So this means the world to me. I'll just read poems. I'm going to read you 5 poems. Prayer of the Backhanded. Not the palm, not the pear tree switch, not the broomstick, nor the closest extension cord, not his braided belt, but God. Bless the back of my daddy's hand, which, holding nothing tightly against me and not wrapped in leather, eliminated the air between itself and my cheek. Make full this dimpled cheek, unworthy of its unfisted print, and forgive my forgetting the love of a hand hungry for reflex, a hand that took no thought of its target, like hail from a blind sky, involuntary, fast, but brutal in its bruising. Father, I bear the bridge of what might have been a broken nose. I lift to you what was a busted lip. Bless the boy who believes his best beatings lack intention, the mark of the beast. Bring back to life the son who glories in the sin of immediacy, calling it love. God, save the man whose arm, like an angel's invisible wing, may fly backward in fury, whether or not his son stands near. Help me hold in place my blazing jaw as I think to say, excuse me. Nim. They said to say goodnight and not goodbye, unplugged the TV when it rained. They hid money in mattresses, so to sleep on decisions. Some of their children were not their children. Some of their parents had no birth dates. They could sweat a cold out of you. They'd wake without an alarm telling them to. Even the short ones reached certain shelves. Even the skinny cooked animals too quick to catch. And I don't care how ugly one of them arrived. That one got married to somebody fine. They fed families with change and wiped their kitchens clean. Then another century came. People like me forgot their names. Bullet points. I will not shoot myself in the head, and I will not shoot myself in the back, and I will not hang myself with a trash bag. And if I do, I promise you, I will not do it in a police car while handcuffed or in the jail cell of a town I only know the name of because I have to drive through it to get home. Yes, I may be at risk, but I promise you, I trust the maggots who live beneath the floorboards of my house to do what they must to any carcass, more than I trust an officer of the law of the land to shut my eyes like a man of God might, or to cover me with a sheet so clean my mother could have used it to tuck me in. When I kill me, I will do it the same way most Americans do. I promise you, cigarette smoke, or a piece of meat on which I choke, or so broke I freeze in one of these winters we keep calling worst. I promise if you hear of me dead anywhere near a cop, then that cop killed me. He took me from us and left my body, which is, no matter what we've been taught, greater than the settlement a city can pay a mother to stop crying, and more beautiful than the new bullet fished from the folds of my brain. Say thank you. Say I'm sorry. I don't know whose side you're on, but I am here for the people who work in grocery stores that glow in the morning and close down for deep cleaning at night, right up the street, and in cities I mispronounce, in towns too tiny from a big black car to quit, and in every wide corner of Kansas where going to school means at least one field trip to a slaughterhouse. I want so little, another leather-bound book, a gimlet with a lavender gin, bread so good when I taste it, I can tell you how it's made. I'd like us to rethink what it is to be a nation. I'm in a mood about America today. I have PTSD about the Lord. God, save the people who work in grocery stores. They know a bit of glamour is a lot of glamour. They know how much it costs for the eldest of us to eat. Save my loves and not my sentences. Before I see them, I draw a mole near my left dimple, add flair to the smile they can't see behind my mask. I grin or lie, or maybe I wear the mouth of a beast. I eat wild animals, while some of us grow up knowing what gnocchi is. The people who work at the grocery don't care. They say, thank you. They say, sorry, we don't sell motor oil anymore, with a grief so thick you could touch it. Go on, touch it. It is early. It is late. They have washed their hands. They have washed their hands for you, and they take the bus home. And I'll finish with a duplex. The duplex is a form that I invented, and I'm mentioning that because this is definitely a time of invention for all of us, a time of invention and improvisation. And I want us to keep that in mind as we continue to support our bookstores. How can we, other than attending events like this one, thank God for events like this one and for being, but how can we continue to support our bookstores and one another in a time like this time? Duplex. I begin with love, hoping to end there. I don't want to leave a messy corpse. I don't want to leave a messy corpse full of medicines that turn in the sun. Some of my medicines turn in the sun. Some of us don't need hell to be good. Those who need most need hell to be good. What are the symptoms of your sickness? Here is one symptom of my sickness. Men who love me are men who miss me. Men who leave me are men who miss me in the dream where I am an island. In the dream where I am an island, I grow green with hope. I'd like to end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jericho. Thank you so much, everyone. I know we can't snap. Jericho can't hear us, but you can get them going on. You can get those keys going. You can show some love. That's amazing, so amazing. Thank you. Yeah, thank you all. Just give a moment here. Everyone show some love. So, the authors have graciously answered a few questions for us if you guys have some. I mean, I wonder if you, maybe just to kind of, to get us started, because break the Q&A ice. Yeah, writing has been tough at this time, but what about reading? Have you guys, have you been reading? Do you want to show some love to some of the books or poems or stories or anything, essays that have gotten you through the past few months or helped in any way, or even just a friend who's got a book out that you want to show some love to? Whoever wants it.
I can say I've been doing a lot of reading. I have not been doing a lot of writing in these times, but I have been doing a lot of reading. And actually, Raven Lalani's Luster is out this week, I believe. And I read it maybe a month ago, and it just completely blew my little mind. Like, it's so fucking amazing, and just really just kind of knocked me on my ass. So I highly recommend it. It's really beautiful. Like, it's out now. Yeah.
That's Carmen. Can I put in a plug? Because this series that I started in March when quarantine happened, I'm about to take a little break, but it'll be back on September 24th, and Raven will be reading.
Yay! Oh, I'm so glad. Oh my God, I can't wait to watch that.
With Kelly Jo Ford and Melissa Ragley. That's going to be a really great night. I'm so excited. Yeah.
Great.
Very cool. Thank you.
Can I talk about a book?
Yeah.
There's a book by Natasha Trethewey, a memoir called Memorial Drive that I just finished. I read it, and then I loved it so much that I listened to it. And I think either way, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. And I think it's a good idea to read it. And then there's new poetry books by Tommy Blount, Blount. He has these wonderful poems in his first book about Luther Vandross that I cannot believe I did not write. I'm so angry that he wrote those poems before I did. So those are some of the things that I've been looking at and thinking about that are really good.
That's very cool. What about you, Karen?
Yeah, I've been reading Ayala Dawn Johnson. She's got stories coming out with Small Beer, and she has this novel, Trouble the Saints, that I'm like neglecting my children to read. The way you would like sneak off to take like hot gulps of whiskey. Like, I just keep inventing reasons to like sneak downstairs to read pages of this book. It's amazing. And my brother has a wonderful Florida book out, In the Land of Good Living. I worry, it's such a hard time to put a book out. I worry like our 7 relatives will be its only reader. So I mentioned it to you because it's hilarious. And he walked the entire state of Florida, and it's a good read for right now when everyone's gearing up to be, you know, on tenterhooks about the election. And so, but Ayala also, oh my God. Ayoko Matsuda has a book coming out with Soft Skull, these kind of feminist revisions of Japanese fairy tales. Really wonderful, really joyful and subversive.
That's really cool. And yeah, I mean, your family, it's not just Karen, but Kent Russell, amazing author, great essay collection. I am sorry to say I have raised a timid son. It's fantastic. Came out a few years ago. I'm really excited for Kent's new book. It's so cool. Celeste, how about you?
I've been reading a lot of poetry, actually. I don't know why I can't focus on fiction, but so I've been reading a lot of poets that recentish discoveries for me, like Ilya Kaminsky's Deaf Republic. Ada Limon is a huge favorite of mine, and Ross Gay. And then some like really old favorites, things that I loved when I was a teenager, like Adrienne Rich and Anne Sexton. But I just started reading this, which is Zadie Smith's Intimations, which are essays that she actually just started writing like during the beginning of lockdown. And I'm finding them like really moving and thought-provoking, and hoping that they're gonna like jar some new thoughts free as well.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Zadie Smith, like that. So
I'm like, you put out a book during the pandemic. I'm only like halfway through, but I'm optimistic. So
very, very cool. I got a question here from Will, who asks, many of you write about trauma and the ways in which we cope with it. How do you go about navigating your own traumas when writing about them? Yeah, right? Who wants that one?
I'll start off and hope that someone will jump in and like tag team me. I think there's this idea that writing is sort of a form of therapy, and it is for a lot of people. It doesn't work quite like that for me. I mean, because what I write in my books doesn't end up being autobiographical, but what it does do, I think, for me, is it's a route for me to understand what I actually think and feel better. And so I often find, as I start a story, I'm puzzled, and that's why I find my way into the story. I don't understand why this person would do such a thing, or why this situation occurred. And as I start to write deeper into that story, I start to understand more about just sort of the emotions or the human beings that are in there and how people work. And what always happens is, by the end, I understand those characters a little better, but I also understand something about myself better. I understand why I was preoccupied with those situations. And so I don't know if that actually answers the question, but for me, when it's about writing about trauma, it always kind of comes in sideways in that way. It always, for me, is about just trying to understand sort of the emotional terrain that the characters find themselves in.
I like how you put that, like, coming sideways. Sorry, go ahead, Jericho, go for it.
I'll just add to that two things. One is, and I didn't realize this is really what part of, or at least maybe not why I'm a writer, but part of the reason I'm a writer. And that is that there are all these words and phrases and terms that I did not have when I was a younger person that I wish I had that helped me navigate the world daily. So a word like microaggression, or a phrase like sexual coercion, like that, like those were not, the idea that those weren't even, I understood that those things existed, but I did not have terms for them. And because I did not have a term for them, I could not prove to myself that they existed. Like even just proving it to myself, I always felt like I was some sort of a paranoid, crazy person, and now when I have the term, I feel less like a paranoid, crazy person. So I think what happens when I write is that which is traumatic, because I give it language, I suddenly have a handle on it that I did not have before. Now, I'm not saying that I manage it better in my day-to-day life, but I do know that I manage it better than I did before I was writing about it. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, which is sort of along the same lines, is that when I'm handling it on the page, it is indeed on the page. And so I can begin to see, because I'm dealing with what I deal with on the page archetypally or as with characters, then I can begin to see myself archetypally, or I can begin to see myself as a character. And then that helps my action and reaction, given whatever trauma I have experienced. It helps my action and reaction going forward. But when you're reading a book, it's very easy for you to say, don't do that, girl. Don't go in that door. You know what happened the last time you went in that door. You know what I mean? It's much harder to do when you're looking at yourself. But then when you put yourself on a page, you have no choice but to do that a little bit better in real life, I think.
I am furiously scribbling notes over here, Jericho. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, when Celeste was just speaking, I just remembered a tweet from today that I saw where somebody quoted the poet Morgan Parker, where Morgan had said, "Writing isn't therapy, therapy is therapy," which I thought was like really beautiful. And I was thinking about this because like when I was writing my recent book, which was a memoir, that was like very difficult material, I made the mistake of like not going to therapy and like going away into the wilderness to like write my truth, and it was actually like incredibly traumatic, and I did everything wrong, and it was like very bad. So I feel like you really have to just pay super, because yeah, like I found the writing itself not cathartic but traumatic. Like the act of writing was itself traumatic, and so I don't know, I feel like keeping those things, thinking of those things as very separate, for me, I found very helpful, and I think is helpful if you're writing very, you know, for a certain kind of person, I suppose, for writing certain kinds of material.
Yeah, that makes me think of there's a T. Kira Madden essay called "Against Catharsis" about that tackles that same question, right? Like therapy and writing, they're maybe linked sometimes, but they're different, and yeah, something else goes into the crafting on the page than just what you do in a therapist's office. Karen, what about?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, I was just thinking, I saw some comedian who was saying, you know, if you don't think that you need therapy, mention to your best friend, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting therapy," and watch the look of relief that will pass over their face. and then judge for yourself whether you would benefit, which I thought that was so funny. But I love what has been said, and I do sort of think, you know, I wrote this bonkers story some time ago about these girls who they're silkworms, and they're sort of trapped in this factory, and you know, they sort of learn how to spin their own cocoons over the course. They're sort of stalled in some purgatorial place in their metamorphosis, and they figure out how to use this nightmarish stuff that keeps regenerating in their bodies. And I mean, that's like not the metaphor for everything I write at all, you know, but I do think there's a way, if instead of sort of like blood welling to a cut, you start to think about, okay, I'm a hydrologist. How can I use this material, or what can I do with it? What can I make with it? If there is something in your past that has that. I used to worry that no matter what story I was telling, like certain elements would, you know, it was almost like having a traumatic nightmare, like in that story, you know, and that used to trouble me. I was like, am I just going to keep telling this same story in these sort of different locations? And now I think I have a little bit of different attitude, where a story reveals something to you, or reveals something to your reader, and it's a way to get at the secret depths that you really can't access in this kind of dialogue, I think. And, you know, what Jericho was saying too, you know, linking yourself to these archetypes, or linking yourself to a history, feeling so much less alone, and having a more panoramic capture of your own story, you know, seeing how it fits with other stories. That's like a real power of reading to me. I love reading everybody on this bookmark of faces that I'm making uncanny eye contact with for that reason, you know.
Thank you, Karen. Reeling for the Empire is the story Karen just mentioned. That's one of my favorite Karen Russell stories. So thank you for that new interpretation on it. One final question that from Kate Petty, who asks, "I love what Jericho said about this being a time for innovation and improvisation. I wonder, what are some of the innovations of quarantine that have brought you all some joy or peace, or maybe just comfort?"
Perfecting my Coke float. I'm serious, I've figured out the exact measurements, just how much Coke, how much ice cream, which ice cream is best. You know, I figured out that my float is a Coke float. It's not root beer, not Dr. Pepper. I need a Coca-Cola. You know, I live in Atlanta. It's kind of the law around here. And I think, and I do feel comforted by that, especially as a person who's always had like big food problems. So I'm just happy that I've been going overboard on getting my Coke float just right, and that I can spend a good portion of the night making sure that I've done so.
Wait, Jericho, I have to jump in because as a fellow Coke float, not a root beer float kind of thing, is it like a secret, or can you tell us?
Well, it's not a secret. It's just that I got lucky because I have these glasses here. I wish I had them near me. And they're the perfect size for the pint. And then when you add, you just need to make sure that the Coke is right under the ice cream. Like maybe that much under the ice cream. Okay? And then you smush. Good idea to have some straws around, you know? Maybe I shouldn't talk about straws. Try to get some recycled straws. Do not try to drink your Coke float with a paper straw. It's a waste of your time. Just drink it. If you only believe in paper straws, use a spoon, drink it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm doing to cope. I don't know what y'all are doing. I'm proud of my Coke float. I feel like my Coke float is a graduation from the family size packs of Doritos I was eating. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy about my Coke float.
You should know, just a shout out to Kate Petty who asked this question. She writes, "This is exactly the answer I was hoping for."
I know. You have just made my pandemic life much, much better, because now I'm gonna get this right finally.
And if you don't get it right the first time, you can have another Coke float tonight.
I think you have to have another Coke float. If you don't get it right, I think it is like for science. If you don't, you're really just quitting.
Yeah.
I bought an inflatable pool for my backyard, and I filled it with hose water. And I thought to myself, this won't be nearly as refreshing as getting in a real pool. But reader, it was. When you lay back and you sort of look at the sky, it sort of feels like you're the water is just sort of, and it's like hose water. It's not, but it actually feels incredible. And it made my whole day. It improved my entire day. It was so hot here, and it really cooled me off. I was like, oh, it feels like it's 70 degrees outside, even though it was definitely not. So yeah, if you have any kind of outdoor space, I highly, you can get one for not that much money on the internet. Just buy an inflatable pool. I strongly recommend.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Where are you, Carmen, right now?
I'm in Philadelphia. So we have a very tiny little postage stamp backyard. So I was like, we are putting an inflatable pool back here, and we did it. It's great.
I sense an inflatable pool sesh with a Coke float maybe in your future.
Stay cool.
Oh, heck yes.
I'm rethinking our use of our little postage stamp yard too, because now I'm inflatable pool is going to be a thing. My innovation, such as it is, I feel is the throwback. I planted a garden, which is so boring, but has brought me so much joy. And we planted a whole bunch of seeds, and we don't get a whole lot of sun, so I don't actually know what's going to grow. The one thing that did grow was right when the lockdown started, we didn't have any remote schooling, and my son and I were like, let's sprout some beans in plastic bags in the windows, and they sprouted, and we planted them, and then they grew, and now they've made their vines, and then they made their little pods. And I don't know why I found this so fascinating, but I opened it up, I'm like, there's beans inside. It worked. It actually worked, and they look just like the beans that we planted. And my husband is laughing because I think our harvest was I think we were 35 beans, and I think we planted 25 beans. So this clearly is not any kind of sustenance, but the true story is I have the little jar of beans. What am I going to do with them? I'm not going to cook them. It's it's not even a handful. But I put them in a little jar, and I have them here in my office. It's just kind of a reminder to myself that you can keep growing things, and there's a cycle, and anytime it seems like you're stuck, I'm just going to kind of remind myself okay, this is a cycle that'll go around. I had this bean that I took out of my cupboard, and I planted it in the dirt, and then it made a plant, and then it made another bean, and we can do that again if we need to. So that's been my my pandemic farmer, very small harvest.
I love that. We also had a bumper crop of like 2 banana peppers, Celeste, but it was like super exciting when they came. You guys, this one goes out to the parents of young children. This is my quarantine innovation. Happy to just show it to you. You can't really put young kids in a Tupperware bin and feel good about yourself as a parent. But if you put like rocket ship stickers on it,
Yes.
you can really put them into a Tupperware bin, and you can read more pages of Ayala's book, and you feel pretty solid. They're on a moon flight, and you're on a journey of your own. And it no longer feels like you just put them in a box. It's a rocket.
Oh, and
There you go.
there's a pillow in there?
Yeah, there's
really
some paths. Yeah, totally. There's blasters. We
Brilliant.
tried to build a rocket, and it was like a dismal failure. So then we went the bin approach. So
There's really not that much difference between a blow-up inflatable pool and a box. It's just the water. You have a little water in there, and
well, now it could be a pool in the yard with a hose. I now know from Carmen. So I feel like good about tomorrow.
right?
Yeah.
I love it. Oh my God. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. This has been such a fantastic night. Thank you all. Thank you, Jericho. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Celeste. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you so much. Thank you again, everyone who's here. Thank you for being here and for your generosity. Thanks, Book Industry Charitable Fund, for helping independent booksellers and bookstores. Thank you, Center for Fiction, for running this event. This has been awesome. The series that I host online, The Antibody, is back on Thursday, September 24th. So I'm taking a little bit of break. But as I mentioned before, Kelly Jo Ford, a novelist whose book Crooked Hallelujah just came out and has been getting great buzz. Raven Leilani will be here reading from her already very acclaimed new novel, Luster. And Melissa Ragsley, who's a fantastic short story author with a new collection out called We Know This Will All Disappear, will be here reading on September 24th. So you can find out more information about that on Twitter and see all the other, there will be more. We'll keep this going into the fall, online readings as much as we can. Oh my gosh, Karen, so beautiful. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Karen.
Right,
Thank you, everybody.
Jericho. I'm totally distracted.
Thank you all so much. I'm gonna cry. This was amazing. Thank you.
It's a beautiful kid.
Thank you so much. And everyone else out there, enjoy your summer, stay healthy, and keep reading books. Yay. Have a good night, guys.